Hello, everyone. Welcome. Spiritual 411, where spirit speaks. So I am excited to be here today. We've been deep diving between the science and the spiritual, and we deep dove, if that's a word, into the nervous system. And the part of the nervous system that we did not discuss, because I felt like it had its own information. The pineal gland is a gland in your brain that not a lot is known about. There's still a mystery there. And so we're going to break it down, what it does, and how does it play into intuition? How does it play into connection to the divine? Because for me, I feel like the pineal gland is the doorway to the divine. And so today we're going to deep dive into the pineal gland, what it is, how it works, what we know about it, and then some ways in which it is impacted by environment and by plant-based medicine. So we're going to talk about some controversial things as far as mushrooms and psilocybin. Disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not giving any medical advice. So please always consult your own medical providers, doctors. I'm bringing you the information, and please take what resonates and leave the rest. But as always, be discerning. Be discerning about any information you're getting from anyone. And I don't have any degree other than an education degree. So my claim to fame is teaching, researching, breaking down information, and presenting it. It is your job as the audience to then ask the questions and use your discernment. What is for you, what is not, what you agree with, and what you don't. And it's okay either way. So I'm just glad you're here as we talk about the pineal gland and how it works and how we can impact our own entry into the divine. This, for me, was the way in which it really gave me the big aha moment or the big light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, we're all biologically predisposed to be intuitive, to be able to get into connection with higher states of consciousness, with higher dimensions, crossed over loved ones, galactic brothers and sisters, whoever you want to be in connection with, as long as you're doing it safely. We always want to make sure we're protecting ourselves because we are living on a dualistic planet. There is light and there is dark. So just as you can get into connection with the light, you can also get into connection with the dark. And right now we've got a lot going on in our collective that is exposing the dark. So hopefully in some small little way, I'm impacting the other side of that conversation and how to get into connection with the light, your inner light that shines from within you, that connects to the light of the universe, God, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. So here we go. Welcome, everyone. Pineal gland. DMT, plant medicine. What's this all about? How does it all impact each other? How does it work together? How does it not work together? The pineal gland doesn't create divine consciousness. It helps tune the nervous system into states where transcendence, intuitive or non-ordinary awareness becomes accessible. So think of the pineal gland as the receiver, not the generator. However, I think with some of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, I think there is a little bit of generation going on because I do feel like parts of the pineal gland that we don't understand quite yet or have all the answers about quite yet is going to show us that this is the doorway to the divine. So what does the pineal gland actually do? Biology first, right? The pineal gland is a tiny endocrine organ deep in the brain that regulates melatonin, your sleep-wake cycle, influences circadian rhythm, responds to light, darkness, and electromagnetic cues, helps shift the brain between ordinary waking consciousness and altered states, such as dreaming, deep meditation, and hypnagogia. Not really sure what that is, but I have a feeling it's got something to do with hypnosis. This already matters because altered states are where people reliably report spiritual or divine experiences across cultures, religions, and time. This is what I believe is the doorway to the divine. It creates the antenna that says, I am tuning in to the frequency that is going to allow me to get into communication, connection with the divine, with your higher self, with your crossed over loved ones, with the angelic realm, and all the other realms. And your galactic brothers and sisters. So there are 3 ways where the divine part enters carefully. Number 1 is state shifting, not spiritual authority. Information must be interpreted. We talk about interpreting the information quite a bit in my last podcast. Yes, you are psychic. When we really go into the nervous system and regulation and then interpretation. So if you've not checked out that podcast, that would be the precursor to this one. And interestingly enough, I think that you could listen to them in either order, to be honest with you. So when the spiritual gland supports deep rest, reduced sensory input, and coherent brain rhythms, the brain becomes less filtered, less ego dominant, and more integrative. So let's take a minute here and talk about the ego. The ego that is part of the reptilian brain of fight or flight. The ego in our brain or our mental body that for many people is running the programming. So keeping you safe by always having you choose what you already are familiar with, good or bad. And this is how people can get into patterns of relationships that don't work out, or jobs that don't work out, or things that don't feel good. You have the same type of relationship, just insert the different partner, right? This is how this happens, is that ego, that fight or flight, keep me safe survival brain is running the programming. And this is where it's really, really important to become self-aware of, what are my thoughts? What am I thinking? And do I have to flip that script from fear-based thought patterns to healthy, positive thought patterns? Really important. Really, really important. Okay. So that's the neurological condition in which people experience unity consciousness. So you've shut down the ego, the fight or flight, the fear-based brain, and now you can get into unity consciousness. Timelessness, recognizing that time is not linear. It's linear in planet Earth, and that's about it. Inner guidance, really being able to tune into your own intuition or your higher self. Profound insight, universal wisdom, wisdom coming from the Akash, wisdom coming from Archangel Metatron, wisdom coming from you. Remembering. Being connected to something larger, right? Christ consciousness, God in whatever form you believe. Number 2. The pineal is a gatekeeper between modes of awareness. And I had to chuckle because in my evidential medium course, which is now the 5D awakening course, which I'm doing in April. So if you're interested in that and learning how to really develop your intuition or your mediumship, please head over to my website in the event section, for more information. But one of the things I teach is part of your team of guides, angels, and ascended masters is you have a gatekeeper, a guide that is your gatekeeper that only allows in those beings, spirits, other side of the veil that are for your highest and greatest good, as long as you're setting that intention, right? We've got to set that intention. When we're always, whenever we're getting into connection with the other side, we need to make sure that we're setting the intention that it's only going to be out of light and love. We don't want to get into connection with anything that is dark or demonic or negative. No, we do not. All right, so the pineal sits at the intersection of light perception, hormonal regulation, neural timing. This makes it uniquely positioned to help the brain move between dimensions of experience in a neuroperceptual way. Doorway to the divine? That's what I'm hearing. Move between dimensions of experience, right? So going from third dimension to fourth dimension to fifth dimension, the other side of the veil, whatever you want to call it. So you're changing how reality is filtered. Your pineal gland is doing the filtering. Number 3, this is where things start getting interesting. DMT. What we can say about DMT. There is evidence that the body produces trace amounts of DMT. DMT profoundly alters perception and sense of self. The pineal has the enzymes capable of participating in its synthesis. DMT. It's a really long name, and I'm not going to try to say it, but it is a chemical that is found in trace amounts in your pineal gland that alters your perception and sense of self. It's what helps you remember who you are. Because when we come into this experience, we forget who we are. We forget that we are a part of universal source love. We forget that we are a child of God or a participant in the universe. We're not just humans. We're not just human beings on planet Earth. We came here to have the human experience. So your DMT allows you to tap into and remember the lessons, your sense of self, where you came from, which we're not really supposed to do. But for those of us who are on this journey of awakening and ascending, that's how we do that, by remembering, by waking up. That's why we're awakening, right? We're ascending the human experience into our spiritual experience, into our multi-dimensional experience. The pineal is part of the biochemical ecosystem that supports a non-ordinary consciousness, your multi-dimensionality. The same terrain where mystical experiences occur. It is your antenna to the universe. So then can't find much on the pineal crystals because, again, they're controversial. There's not much known about them. They're primarily made of hydroxyapatite, a calcium phosphate crystal. These are also found in your inner ear for balance, bone structure, and cellular signaling scaffolds. So, again, not much known about them. The problem is we don't really know much about them, but scientifically. However, intuitively, what I've been given from Archangel Metatron is they are, in their vibrating, they're tuning you into the frequency of the universe. So that's the doorway to the divine. It's those crystals vibrating in your pineal gland that helps you get into those altered states of consciousness, opening your connection to your multi-dimensionality, to the divine, to your higher states of consciousness, to your angels, your guides, your crossed over loved ones, whoever you want to get into connection with, the Arcturians, the Palladians, the Venusians, whatever you believe in, take this all with a grain of salt. But take whatever resonates and, leave the rest for sure. But this is what I'm being given to share with each and every one of us, because it's time for us to know that we are more than just third dimensional human beings. All right. One of the controversial things I'm going to say here is fluoride has been shown to calcify these minerals, keeping them from vibrating. So it's really, really important for us to kind of be aware that there are things that we can do. And I'm going to go over some things. Actually, the next thing I'm going to talk about is calcification, but just so you know that fluoride is one of the ways that calcification happens. But I'm also going to talk about some other ways. So the pineal gland commonly develops calcium deposits over time. This is called pineal calcification. It's extremely common. It can be age-related, influenced by lifestyle and environment. There's the fluoride. Visible on brain imaging, they can see it. These deposits are primarily calcium phosphate, similar to bone mineral. So it's really going to impede the ability for it to vibrate. There's no credible evidence that these are consciousness-enhancing crystals, that they're spiritual antennas, that they're required for intuitive or awakening. But I think intuitively, this is exactly what I'm saying, that they are helping you to walk through that doorway to the divine, or they're creating that doorway to the divine. Calcification can also be associated with reduced melatonin production. So people who are having a problem sleeping, disrupted sleep-wake cycle, so that circadian rhythm being disrupted as well. So really important. So am I overreaching about what the pineal gland is for, or it does? Maybe. But I think that if you are someone who is intuitively developing, you're ascending, you're awakening, I feel like this is important information, because we really need to learn how to trust and act on what we're receiving. And I feel like having this information can help you to understand biologically how you are receiving the information. And so really, really important, because the calcification does affect reduced melatonin production. It disrupts your sleep cycles and your circadian rhythm. And why that matters is because when you're not sleeping well, you have poor emotional regulation. You have a dysregulated nervous system, so you have loss of clarity. It's hard to perceive the information. It's almost like your tuning dial on the radio isn't quite right, and so it's muffled, or it's unclear, right? And so it's hard to be able to understand what you're receiving. Chronic vigilance, that heightened state of awareness because you're overtired and your nervous system is dysregulated. The intuition gets noisy and unreliable. And so again, it's hard to receive the information. And then it's also like, are you receiving it from the most highest light? Are you only getting what you're supposed to be getting? So even though the science doesn't want to ascertain that there's a mystical aspect to this, I think that's exactly what I'm saying, that the deposits or the crystals inside the pineal gland that they can't quite explain, I feel like that is the connection to the divine. And I feel like that is the doorway. That is the way we tune into the universal language of the universe, which is frequency, vibrational frequency. So, in the science, they call it a crystal myth. I don't think it's a myth, but the pineal gland does not respond to light and electromagnetic signals. It's frequency. It's responding to sound. It plays a role in state shifts, wakening, dreaming, deep rest. Altered states are where people subjectively experience insight or transcendence. I do think that the crystals vibrating do activate your third eye. I do feel like they are opening that ability to receive divine information. Intuition does not depend on pineal calcification status. So you do not need a decalcified pineal gland. You do not need a special diet, supplements, or detoxes. You do not need painful practices or altered states. These things can help, and I think that they're positive things for you, everything in moderation, and anything that you're called to. You know, intuitively, you're going to know what your body needs, what your nervous system needs, what your pineal gland needs, because you're all one system and everything works together. But your intuition depends far more on your nervous system regulation, adequate sleep, emotional safety, which takes us into trauma healing, and embodiment and presence, being present. And that goes back to self-awareness. That goes back to your reptilian brain, your ego, and not letting that run the programming. A highly regulated person with a calcified pineal gland will have a clearer intuition than a dysregulated person chasing activation. Listen to that again. A highly regulated person with a calcified pineal gland will have a clearer intuition than a dysregulated person chasing activation. So it does help to not have a calcified pineal gland for sure. But if you're someone that feels like, oh my God, I've used fluoride my whole life, or I'm not getting enough sleep, or oh my gosh, you know, I don't take care of myself physically, it's okay. That's what this is saying. It's okay. Because all that other stuff you can do, right? All that other stuff you can take care of. You know, when I started my awakening journey, I was exercising a little more. I was eating way better, right? I was working on having a normal sleep cycle, right? But when I get off of those things, right, my intuition doesn't diminish, or diminish completely. You know, it may might take a little more work, right, to get into my altered state of consciousness to be able to get the information from the other side. Because we're all works in progress. We're all human, right? We have a human body. But I think that it's important to know that your pineal gland does play a very important role. So, straight talk. Some pineal activation practices can. disrupt sleep, increase dissociation, trigger anxiety or depersonalization, and create false certainty during dysregulation. So we're going to talk about those things separately at the end. But if your practice is making you wired, but exhausted, detached from your own body, obsessed with insight, or less functional in daily life, it's because your nervous system is on overload. It's not that you're waking up. Waking up can almost feel a little euphoric. It feels in alignment with life. So if you're experiencing any of these things, it's going to be really important to go back and listen to the last podcast, Yes, You're Psychic, so that you can really learn how to regulate your nervous system. And in doing that, you will positively impact your pineal gland because it's part of your nervous system. So the bottom line is that there are calcium deposits that affect sleep and regulation. But your intuition improves when the brain is rested, the body feels safe, and the system is coherent. Things are working together. And I would even say this would go back to mentioning the Heart Math Institute in brain and heart coherence. When your brain and your heart are working together, when you're creating the energy field between your heart and your brain. So if you want more information on that, definitely check out the Heart Math Institute. All right. What are seven, well, there are 7 ways that there are 7 contributors to pineal calcification, right? So we're going to dive into this a little bit because even though in the last segment they talked about how calcification, it's not the end all be all, but it does impact you. And I think that, because it is the tuning mechanism to opening the divine doorway, that I think it's important to know what does calcify those little crystals that are so important to us and how to take care of ourselves. First and foremost, some calcification is normal because that goes back to aging, right? It does not mean dysfunction or loss of intuition. So that said, there are several factors that are associated with greater or earlier calcification. All right. And these are the things that we're going to talk about. So number 1, age is primary. Calcification increases naturally over time. It's common and often incidental on brain scans. Many people with calcified pineals function perfectly well. So, and some people, come in with different states of calcification because here's the thing. Remember, we came in to forget our multidimensionality. We came in to have the 3D human experience. And we can't do that if we remember our multidimensionality. We can't have the real experience we came here to have if we are already intuitively aligned and we're receiving information from our higher selves, right? Because remember, I always say that that's the shortcut, right? When you're in alignment with your higher self or with the universe or your guides, they're pointing you all the time in the direction that's going to take you the easiest and fastest way to your goal. And of course, that's what we want to get to. But to get there, we're here to have a human experience. So to go through trials and tribulations, to overcome challenges, to learn how to achieve goals, to learn how to love and receive love and give love. And so there's a lot more that we came here to do than just to remember our multidimensionality. So it's normal, right? There's a normalcy to wherever you are with your calcification when you come into this experience, right? Um, we're going to talk about how you can decalcify it, uncalcify it, maybe decalcify it. All right. Number 2, chronic inflammation. Long-term systematic inflammation appears to accelerate calcification processes in the body, including the pineal. So, ongoing stress, untreated trauma, poor sleep, chronic illness, highly inflammatory diets. Inflammation matters more than any single food or chemical. So this kind of goes back to, yes, you can have some calcification, but you can also not expand on that or worsen it, right? So inflammation, really looking at what do you eat? Do the things that you eat inflame your systems, your organs? Are you having ongoing stress? Do you have an ongoing stressful relationship or job, right? Um, do you have untreated trauma? Which is a lot of why the energy healing that I do in the coaching sessions have an energy healing portion. Because if we're not digging into the root cause, right, of the lack of sleep, of, unconscious thought patterns or actions, right, it's going to be really, really hard to take care of ourselves. Number 3, sleep disruption and circadian misalignment. The pineal gland is highly sensitive to rhythm. Irregular sleep schedules. Do you have an irregular sleep schedule? Do you have excessive nighttime light exposure? Do you have a bunch of things in your room with little blue lights, right? If you've got a computer in your room or, you've got a smart TV, it's got a little red light on all the time. Like, really looking at that, especially where you sleep, do you do shift work, right? Is your circadian rhythm really off because you're not sleeping the same time every day, right? Chronic insomnia, you just have a hard time falling asleep. These disrupt melatonin signaling, which may indirectly contribute to calcification over time. Because remember, in the pineal gland, it regulates melatonin. So, really, really important to kind of look at that disruption of your sleep and circadian misalignment. So, and that's something you can easily manage, except for those of you who maybe are on shift work, that might be something that you have to deal with over time when you can get a different shift or a consistent shift. But for the rest of it, really, really important, be very honest with yourself about what lights are on in your bedroom that, are on or blinking and then, are you having an irregular sleep schedule just because you're not being intentional with when you're going to bed and when you're putting yourself to bed? All right, number 4, environmental toxins. Some studies suggest correlates with heavy metals, aluminum, and then again, I would put in here, fluoride, air pollution, and certain pesticides, which, is crazy because we've got a lot coming out in the collective now about air pollution and pesticides. So I think we're really starting to, at least, the awareness is bringing change and, we can still keep working towards those things. So the body does have a detox system, so you shouldn't be in panic mode. And this is, cumulative, exposures, cumulative. So over years and years and years. And everyday exposure does not equal guaranteed calcification. So again, your body does have its own system to detox. So if you're doing the other things that you can do and take care of, you're definitely going to mitigate any calcification. Oh, there it is, number 5, fluoride. I've been talking about it and I didn't even realize fluoride has been found to accumulate in the pineal gland more than any other soft tissues. It can bind to calcium phosphate. It may contribute to calcification density. We cannot responsibly say that it shuts down the pineal gland or that avoiding fluoride is going to restore spiritual ability. However, I think it's going to help, right? I think anything that you can do to mitigate, if all of these things even help a little bit, all those little bits add up, right? Number 6, calcium and phosphate imbalance. Calcification is not caused by eating calcium. More relevant factors. So if you have a vitamin D imbalance, which many of us, in these colder climates, it's something we have to really be careful of. Magnesium deficiency, really, really important. I've always battled with that. That's something I've always had to be aware of, my magnesium intake. Poor metabolic health. These affect how calcium is used in the body, not intuition directly, but overall regulation. So remember, back to the regulation of your nervous system. Really, really important. Number 7, chronic stress and cortisol. Whew, here we go. Big one, right? Chronic stress and cortisol, especially for those of you who are in that trauma response cortisol addiction, that if you're not getting that cortisol spike, you're not feeling safe and stable because you've flipped the script on what safe and stable is, right? You've got addicted to that spike. Long-term stress keeps the nervous system in survival mode. So those of you in survival mode, this is you, okay? And this is why it's so important to really think about energy healing, emotional healing, trauma healing, PTSD healing, whatever healing, right? Whether it's counseling, medical professional, whoever you resonate with, right? Not a medical provider, not giving you medical advice. But so long-term stress keeps the nervous system in survival mode. This contributes indirectly by disrupting your sleep. So for those of you who do have the disruption of sleep, this is a contributing factor. Increasing inflammation. Again, those of you who suffer from inflammation. Altering hormonal signaling. So regulation is regulation detox. If you're regulating your nervous system, you're coming out of survival mode and you're detoxing your body from the cortisol spike. So really, really, really important. And for some of you who, again, are so used to it because you've been in survival mode for so long, that will feel very uncomfortable. It's almost like, is something wrong because I'm not getting that heightened sense, right? I'm not getting that cortisol spike. When I realized I was addicted to it, I was like, oh my gosh, I keep making situations in my life fall apart because I'm looking for that physical reaction. And when I don't get it, I feel like something's wrong. And now I haven't had one in almost a decade. And every once in a while, I think, oh, this is going to trigger it. And it doesn't, because I've regulated my nervous system, right? All right. What does not cause pineal calcification? One-time exposures, normal calcium intake, lack of meditation. We're going to talk about meditation, blocked chakras, not being spiritual enough. These claims create unnecessary fear. I like that. Unnecessary fear. We don't need any more fear in our lives. I think that the collective does a good enough job with that, right? So what actually supports pineal function? Instead of chasing decalcification, get consistent sleep-wake times. You want darkness at night. Stress reduction wherever you can. Adequate magnesium. Nervous system regulation. Trauma-informed care. When sleep improves, intuition clarity usually follows. I was having a hormonal imbalance going through perimenopause, and I really felt like I was losing my intuition. I really felt like, what am I going to do if I can't do this job? And then once I got my hormones back in balance, it was like, whew, light bulb back on. I was like, oh, thank goodness. Oh, thank goodness. So pineal calcification is influenced by age, inflammation, sleep disruption, stress, and cumulative environmental load, not spiritual failure. You are not a failure. You don't need to clean the pineal to access intuition. You need rest, safety, and rhythm. I like that. Why the ancient traditions focused on the pineal? This is interesting. Ancient cultures didn't have MRI machines, but they were excellent observers of consciousness. So they noticed darkness, stillness, fasting, chanting, breath work brought the altered awareness. A felt inner seeing center behind the forehead. So they were tapping into the pineal gland. A correlation between inner silence and insight, calming your nervous system down, brought in the intuition. They called it the third eye, the seat of the soul, the eye of Horus. Not because it was magical, but because it consistently correlated with expanded perception. But I think it is a little magical because it's also tuning you into the frequency of the universe. So, what this means practically, especially for you, here's the grounded reframe that protects. The pineal gland supports intuitive and transcendent experiences by helping the nervous system enter coherent, low noise states where perception expands beyond habitual cognition. No promises, no metaphysical hierarchy, no chosen ones, just physiology plus consciousness. Everybody has the ability. You're biologically predisposed. Now, are some people awake way before others? Are others thinking this is never going to be what they want to do because it scares them? And that's fine. And that's fine. But for those of you who are here, especially now listening 40 minutes in, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, learning what you need to learn to move to the next step on your journey. So, boundaries, really, really important. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about DMT. We're going to talk about that DMT being one of the ways that we get into the profoundly altered perceptions, sense of self, altered states of perception and sense of self. And again, that being what kind of helps us remember who we are. And there's so many ways in which in this earthly plane that are here to keep us from that, right? Whether it's substances, whether it's trauma, there's a lot of ways in which we can inhibit our ability to remember who we came here to be, our purpose, our multi-dimensionality, our spiritual selves. So the next part of this might be very controversial and maybe something you completely don't agree with, and that's okay, because again, take what resonates. I'm not a medical provider. I'm not giving medical advice. I am a researcher, I am a teacher, and I'm sharing information. All right. So take it as that. And we are going to talk about important, clear boundary. Because if someone is disassociated, sleep deprived, dysregulated, trauma activated, the pineal related experiences can feel spiritual, but actually be destabilizing. That's why regulation takes you to awakening, safety takes you to transcendence, and embodiment can take you to escape. So the bottom line is the pineal gland doesn't connect you to God, but it does. It helps quiet the signal distortion so consciousness can perceive more clearly. What someone calls that clarity, divine, intuitive, universal, is cultural language layered on top of a very human nervous system capacity. Well, we know that it's more than that. That your nervous system, your pineal gland, those crystals in your pineal gland that are vibrating, in my information, in the research and in the intuitive realm, messages from Archangel Metatron, that they are the doorway to the divine, the way in which we are able to tune in to the frequency of the universe, the universal frequency of the universe, love, source, God, higher states of consciousness, remembering our multidimensionality, who we are, being able to tune into the other dimensions and perceive the other planes of existence and who's on those other planes of existence, whether it's your crossed over loved ones or your galactic brothers and sisters. So we're going to talk about how DMT and mushrooms, or what they actually convert in the body to, which is psilocybin, how that can help you to tap into yourself, especially for those who are struggling. So let's get into it, shall we? Okay, part 2. Mushrooms do not contain DMT. They contain psilocybin, which converts in the body to psilocin. Psilocin is functionally similar to DMT in how it acts on the brain. Same receptor family, similar effects on ego dissolution and perception, similar therapeutic outcomes. Calling them the same muddies trust, so we won't. So they're not the same, but they work the same. Psilocybin works by interrupting rigid brain loops. Addiction and PTSD are not normal moral failures. They are stuck neural circuits. You're not broken. You're just stuck. Specifically, the default mode network, or DMN, becomes overdominant. The brain rehearses the same threat stories or craving loops. The nervous system stays locked in survival mode. Psilocybin temporarily deregulates the DMN, or the default mode network. This matters because the DMN is a self-story generator, the rumination engine, the identity loop. This is who I am, what happened to me, what I need, right? People who are always kind of telling the same story. When it quiets, the story loosens, identity softens, new perspectives become biologically possible. That's not spiritual, it's neurological. So, spiritual component of the pineal gland, absolutely. However, there's also a biological mechanism that gets stuck. It's not a moral failure. It's biology, which I feel like this is why a lot of people are calling addiction a disease, because your body is in dis-ease. Something's not working right, and this is what it is. Your neural circuits are stuck in a loop, and this helps break it. So, why this helps PTSD specifically? PTSD, or memory without time, the body keeps reliving events as if they're happening now. Psilocybin increases connectivity between emotional, sensory, and cognitive regions. It allows traumatic memories to be re-experienced with less fear dominance, reduces amygdala hyperreactivity, or the fear center. This creates a window where the memory can be felt without overwhelming threat response, and then restored in the brain as past. That's release, not erasure, but a resolution. Why this helps addiction specifically? Addictions thrive on narrow focus, dopamine-driven compulsion, emotional avoidance, loss of meaning. Psilocybin reliably induces perspective expansion, increased access to emotion, a felt sense of meaning or connection, decreased compulsive salience of substance, People don't stop craving because mushrooms fix them. They stop because the substance no longer feels like the most meaningful relationship in the room. That's a profound nervous system shift. The mystical experience demystified. Studies show that the depth of the subjective experience predicts outcomes. Why? Because experiences of unity, forgiveness, self-compassion, and being part of something larger directly counter the isolation, shame, and fragmentation that fuel trauma and addiction. You don't need to call it divine, but we can. But meaning reorganizes behavior faster than willpower ever will. That's why I feel like programs that have been out there for a long time, such as Al-Anon and AA, have made such a big difference because they're connecting to the divine. They're surrendering. And they're letting go of the shame and isolation. So if you're someone that's really struggling and this is not an option, because unfortunately it's not an option here, it's very, very few places in the United States. And I'm not a proponent of I'm not a proponent of just taking mushrooms. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm saying that there is something within your brain that can be modified to help you. And if you're someone that has the option to go to a center or a place where it is regulated and safe, that is your choice. But please know that I'm not just advocating for illegal mushroom use. But I wanted to highlight that there are things in nature, there are things on the planet that can help you and help the brain function that is keeping you from living the life that you want to live. And one of the things that we are going to talk about, especially if you can't get this kind of plant medicine because it's not widely available, it's not highly regulated, it's not really mainstream at all. I mean, and it's one of those things that's had a lot of negativity surrounding it, and there's definitely a stigma attached to it, old ways of thinking about it, and I think that's also something that I'm hopefully helping to do is demystify that there is real scientific medical benefit to maybe even, at some point down the road, harvesting and creating something that, again, in a controlled environment and safe, could be taken and would be beneficial, especially for people who, have suffered for decades and maybe their whole life and didn't know that there could ever be a different way. Okay, that's my disclaimer. Where the pineal endogenous DMT conversion fits. Carefully. Psilocybin doesn't activate the pineal in a magical sense, but it does mimic endogenous psychedelic compounds, push consciousness into non-ordinary but coherent states, and open perception beyond survival filtering. For a lot of people, that's so huge because they've been stuck in survival mode maybe most of their whole lives, and they don't even know there's something different. I was definitely in that category. I didn't know there was another way of being because I'd always been in survival mode, so I didn't know that I was in survival mode. I didn't know what survival mode was because that was my normal. I didn't know there was another way. And that was scary when I found that out. So, people report insight, emotional catharsis, and life reorientation. So again, state of change brings insight, brings behavior change. Okay, another warning, because this is important. Psilocybin is not universally safe. Ding, 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 ding. Pay attention. Hold on. Because it can destabilize people who are highly disassociated, bipolar, especially type 1, actively psychotic, severely unregulated or unsupported. And without integration, insights decay. The medicines open the door, the work happens after. So we're going to kind of dig into some of those. But it's really important, and this is why I was saying, like, make sure, like, this, if this is something you're being drawn to, that you're going to someone who is a provider. It's regulated. There's resource and support as you go through the process. Very, very important. Okay. So, bottom line, no romance. Psilocybin supports PTSD and addiction recovery by interrupting rigid neural loops, softening identity-based suffering, allowing emotional processing without overwhelm, restoring meaning where compulsion once lived. It doesn't heal people. It creates a biological window where healing becomes possible. Used with respect, preparation, and integration, it can be transformative. Used casually or spiritually bypassed, it can harm. So it's really, really important. Yeah, I would only recommend an authorized, regulated place with long-standing success rates, and be safe. Definitely be safe. Now, what if this is not something that is in your future? If this is something that maybe you don't feel like you're okay with? One of the other things that I would and do recommend is a meditation practice. And I know that for many people that's going to be triggering, because you think of meditation as some monk sitting in a cave for, years on end chanting. That's one way to meditate for sure. But for the more normal people out there, for those of us, especially in the Western world, meditation, if you can think of it as quieting your mind through breathing, breath work for sure, that will regulate your nervous system. Breath work, box breathing. Turning off devices, social media for a certain amount of time every day, for sure. Really getting aware of your thoughts. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking all the time? Are they always a doom loop? Are they always a doom scroll in your head? I'm not good enough. I don't deserve. It's never going to be me. I'm never the one that whatever. Can you flip that script? Half glass empty to half glass full. Gratitude journaling, for sure. 12 things every day you're grateful for. And make 6 of those things that you're grateful for that haven't happened yet. So you're going to be grateful for them as if they've already happened, things that you want. I'm grateful for my beautiful new home. I don't have a beautiful new home, but I'm grateful for the one that's coming because I'm manifesting it, right? So, gratitude journaling, meditation practice, breath work. You can regulate your nervous system. You can start the process of healing and support groups, support healing. Really, really important. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to talk about one of the big ones. So many people, especially in this day and age, because of social media and all of the different ways that our energy is pulled away from us. All the different ways. Anxiety is a deregulation of your nervous system. And especially if you're an empath, someone who is clairsentient, you read energy, you feel energy. You feel energy. So it's really, really important to be able to differentiate between intuition versus anxiety. Learning to tell the difference matters for healing, safety, and self-trust. Many people are told to trust their intuition, but when you've lived with stress or trauma, anxiety can sound very convincing. So intuition. Let's describe intuition. Intuition feels like quiet clarity, a neutral or steady sense of knowing, something that arrives without effort, grounded in the present moment, calm even when the message is firm. Intuition tends to respect your peace, allow choice, leave room to think and check in, feel supportive, not demanding. You may notice intuition more easily when you are rested, regulated, and present in your body. Ding, 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 ding. That's so important. Rested, regulated, and present. That is when it's easy to trust and act on your intuition. Anxiety, however, is a protective survival, not guidance. It is designed to keep you alert, not to help you decide wisely. So anxiety feels like urgency or pressure, fear-based thoughts, repetitive or looping messages, a need to act immediately, physical tension or agitation. Anxiety tends to push for certainty or control, predict worst-case outcomes, feel loud, insistent, or overwhelming, shrink your sense of options. You don't feel like you have anywhere to go. You feel boxed in. Anxiety increases when the nervous system is under stress or perceives threat. Not that there is threat, but it perceives threat. We get confused when the nervous system is deregulated or dysregulated. Fear can masquerade as intuition. Body sensations may feel alarming rather than informative. Urgency can be mistaken for truth. This is not a personal failure. It's a nervous system response. A simple check-in question. Does this feel calm and spacious or urgent and pressuring? Calm and spacious is intuition. Urgent and pressuring is anxiety. If it feels urgent, the next step is regulation, not decision-making. I tell people all the time, urgency is fear energy. If anything is coming out of urgency, it's coming out of fear energy, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to work out. Very important. So regulation comes first. When the body feels safer, intuition becomes clearer, anxiety quiets, decisions feel less charged. Supportive practices include breath work, slowing your breath, grounding in physical sensation, putting your feet out on the earth, rest and sleep, gentle movement, so yoga, tai chi, walking, connection with safe people, reaching out to someone that loves you unconditionally and doesn't have any agenda with speaking with you. Important reminder, you don't need to act immediately. You don't need to get it right. You don't need to trust every internal message. Clarity comes from safety, not pressure. Your body's pace is the right pace. All right. So now let's talk about intuition versus disassociation. Understanding the difference supports safety, clarity, and self-trust. Many people are encouraged to listen inward for guidance. When trauma or chronic stress is part of someone's history, disassociation can sometimes be mistaken for intuition. Intuition is a present moment embodied form of knowing. It happens while you are connected to yourself and your surroundings. Intuition feels like, again, calm clarity, grounded sense of knowing, being present in your body, emotional neutrality or steadiness, awareness with choice. Intuition tends to coexist with sensation and emotion, allow reflection and pacing, feel integrated rather than fragmented, increase self-trust and stability. Intuition is most accessible when the nervous system feels safe enough to stay present moment. Disassociation is a protective nervous system response. It occurs when the body perceives overwhelm and creates distance from experience. Disassociation often feels like numbness or fogginess, feeling unreal or disconnected, emotional shutdown, a sense of watching yourself from outside, gaps in attention or memory. Disassociation tends to reduce access to bodily sensation, limit emotional range, narrow awareness, decrease choice and agency. Disassociation is not a failure. It's a survival strategy that once helped keep you safe. Both intuition and disassociation can feel quite quiet or spacious. The difference is presence. Intuition is quiet and connected. Disassociation is quiet because a connection has pulled away. When disassociation is active, internal messages may feel distant, flat, or unclear rather than grounded. A simple check-in. Am I here and connected or distant and checked out? Here and connected, I'm accessing my intuition. Distant or numb, I need to focus on grounding first. If connection is reduced, the next step is not interpretation. It's a reorientation and safety. Supporting regulation and presence. Helpful practices include noticing physical contact, feet on the floor, back against a chair, gentle movement or stretching, yoga, tai chi, walking, naming objects or colors in the room, slow, steady breathing or box breathing, connecting with a safe person or environment, someone who loves you unconditionally, they don't have an agenda. Presence restores access to intuition, and it cannot be forced. You do not need to push through numbness. You do not need to access insight when disconnected. You do not need to interpret every internal experience. Your nervous system's job is protection. Healing happens when safety is restored. So, I hope for those of you who struggle that this information has been helpful, impactful in any way. I appreciate you for being here, being part of my journey. I am not advocating any of the information that I shared with you today. It was all for educational purposes. And I am sending you so much love and so many blessings. And we'll talk soon.